Okay, so hi, I'm Nick Tiongson, and I am going to be doing a screencast of my theory to practice presentation, where I will be highlighting three key ideas or concepts that I've learned in this course, that I was able to apply in my student teaching and that I intentionally designed lessons around, where I wanted to test out these different theories and ideas and try to use them in the classroom. So, just to give a quick plan here, three of the ideas from class that I've implemented in my student teaching that I'm going to kind of highlight in this presentation are teaching self-regulated learning and using technology, using online tools, which I'll show later, such as Menti, to kind of help with the self-reflection process and foster self-regulated learning in the classroom. Another important idea that I learned in this class was incorporating universal design for learning into my lessons, providing multiple means of entry for students so all students can be involved in the lesson to some capacity, um, and recruiting interest. And last is collaborative learning, right? So designing a classroom environment that teaches how to cooperate with one another, provide social, emotional learning opportunities, and allow students to work together to achieve some type of task and to collaborate with one another to achieve some type of academic task. Um, so starting with self-regulated learning, in summary, it's the process of transforming learners into more independent people who are kind of able to control their performance in academics because they're able to self-regulate. Um, this self-regulation cycle is introduced by Zimmerman, and it essentially is based on three key phases of self-regulating learning. So there's the fourth thought phase where you're setting your goals, you're planning how you're going to approach a task. There's the performance phase where you're actually kind of observing, self-recording, seeing how things are going, implementing self-control, actually putting to practice the goals that you previously set. And last would be the self-reflection phase where you kind of evaluate how you did, and reflect and set goals to improve in the future. And this cycle is kind of what fosters self-regulated learning in students. In short, it's the idea of teaching students how to be independent and how to self-regulate their learning. So this is an example of a slide that I used in a lesson. This was the lesson right after a test that I just gave the students. And it was the first activity of them coming in the day after the test. I just wanted to do a check-in where we talked about how are we feeling. The day after the test, was it surprising how difficult it was for us? Did we find it was easy? Did we find that our strategies and goals towards achieving a good grade on this test were effective for us? And if not, why? And just kind of open up a class discussion on the topic. So specifically, it's focusing it on the self-reflection phase, right? Because it's after the performance, it's after the test, and I'm having the students evaluate. So I used Menti as a tool to kind of help me run this activity. So I had students scan that QR code you see on the slide and answered the two questions. How do you feel coming out of the midterm? And how will this impact your approach for the rest of the school year? Just to share, these were some sample responses that I got from one of the classes that I did this with. This is an actual screenshot from the results of that Mentimeter, and a lot of really great conversation came out of this. Just to give an example, a student shared that they felt worried that they were going to get a bad grade, and this worried and anticipation towards the test that they felt is going to help them because now they, to avoid feeling that nervousness next time around, they're going to make sure to make a strategic plan to study more. That way, they feel more confident walking into the test, and they were able to control and regulate their learning, right? Um, so the goal was to promote them to self-evaluate and adjust, right? So I had a student who said they forgot to study. So as a way to adjust, I asked them some follow-up questions and had students kind of elaborate on their responses in which they would share how coming out of this midterm will change their approach and change their goals moving forward in the class. So something I think that went really well with teaching this self-regulation and self-reflection was the collaborative uh, ability that Menti allowed me to have, right? In the least, this kind of modifies, if not augments, this type of activity where I have students share out how they're feeling after the test. Maybe I collect their answers and read through them in my own time. But by having them share in real time their responses visually on the board where other students can read other students' feelings and study approaches, I think was a helpful tool for students to learn from each other and open up a discussion with each other. Something I would have done to improve the self-regulated learning goal behind this activity would have been to ahead of time, even prior to the test, have done a dedicated activity towards the performance phase and how do you plan on studying for this test? What's your goal in terms of studying and approaching the test? And then this activity would have been a more direct reflection towards that previous activity. That's a way I think I could have improved this. But overall, I think this was a really successful lesson in fostering that self-regulated learning, having students kind of evaluate and adjust their approach towards the school year after a big test. So moving on to my second key idea is the universal design for learning. This is so important for every teacher to understand. It's essentially just based around the idea of as a teacher accommodating to the needs of the learners in your classroom, and not just a particular group of learners, but avoiding any hurdles that are preventing students from getting the learning that they need, making an accommodation for all students in the classroom, right? And we do this by providing opportunities for them to engage, for them to feel represented, and for them to express their learning and demonstrate their actions, right? And I think the key with these three uh, pieces of the universal design for learning is that you provide multiple means for each of these, right? Multiple means for them to engage, multiple means for them to express, and no matter what accommodations they might need. So a way I approach this in the classroom, as you can see, I have a theme on how I make my slides for lessons, but I had them do this graphic organizer for the vocabulary word, which was protest. Rather than just jumping right into the Protestant Reformation, I had them kind of break down the idea of what is a protest to you as an individual, right? So I had different sections where I had them define the sentence using the dictionary. How would you define it in your own words? How would you use it in a sentence or even draw a picture of what a protest visually looks like to you? And provide examples that were relevant to your life of a protest. Um, and I think two key ways that this went very well when I did it was that it recruited interest. I was able to make the topic Protestant Reformation more relevant to their lives by connecting it to maybe protests that are happening in their community that maybe they're involved in or have just seen on the news and helping make the idea of what is a protest relevant to you and providing individual choice, allowing them to either use it in a sentence or draw a picture if that's how you want to demonstrate it, giving them the option or the choice on how they want to express their response. Right. I think that went really well. And the other thing it did was I presented multiple media for communication, right? So I gave them a QR code that leads to a good definition of protest in case they wanted to familiarize themselves with the dictionary's definition of the term. Um, and allowing them not just to only write out the definition in their own words, but providing a drawing to demonstrate what protest means to them. It provides multiple tools and ways to express your answer, right? To construct an answer. Instead of just writing, you can also draw in the draw a picture section of the graphic organizer. Something I think that could have made this activity even better would have been to have had students prepare these graphic organizers in groups. That way they have that social connection too while they're creating this and they can learn from other students' relevant experiences with protests. But I think I supplemented this piece well just by having a class discussion where students shared out their answers to the graphic organizer. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to jump to my last key idea that I applied from this course, which would be collaborative learning, designing activities that are designed around social interaction, having students working together towards achieving a common goal, right? Um, Essentially, in the most simple terms, making effective group work, keyword effective, making group work that actually fosters collaborative learning, right? So one of the ways I tried to do this is when I was teaching absolutism, I provided 5 text descriptions of different absolute monarchs in history, 5 different paragraphs for each ruler. I had the classroom broken up into groups ahead of time where they were sitting at a group that would be assigned to a particular monarch. And that group's goal uh, was to fill out this graphic organizer you see here using the information from the text and working as a group to be able to uh, pull out this information and analyze the information in the text, and then ultimately be able to present this information to the class, right? So I think this encouraged a lot of student-to-student learning. As I was walking around to the different groups, I heard students kind of explaining to each other where they got their answers, what they were planning on saying when they were presenting their information to the class. And I like that each group was working towards a common goal for that group. Each group had their own independent example of a monarch that they were responsible for as a group teaching the class. So they're working towards that common goal of being able to present this information to the rest of their classmates, hence each one having a different ruler. So I think that went really well in fostering social interaction and collaborative learning. But what I think could have made this even better would have been assigning specific roles within those groups, right? So each group's working towards a common goal, the same monarch, but to make this even better, I could have assigned each student to be a scribe or a presenter or a researcher. And that way, each student has more of a specific job that they are responsible for, rather than kind of leaving the autonomy for them to kind of do that within themselves. That would have probably provided more structure. But overall, I think these are just a few common examples of the different ways I used ideas from this class during my student teaching. The truth is, these theories are super relevant to everyday teaching. Almost every lesson should have some aspect of all 3 of these ideas, right? We should always be thinking about how to design a universal learning process that accommodates all students. We should be having them socialize and be collaborative in the classroom, and we should be teaching them those independent, self-regulating learning skills, right? So these are just a couple of examples of some big ideas that I've really been trying to implement all throughout this whole semester of student teaching. I think that's all for now. Professor, thank you so much for being so accommodating and understanding and allowing me to submit this screencast to you. I appreciate it, and thank you for a great semester.